Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is we are full into April, Nate. It's springtime here in the Midwest. Have the clouds dissipated in England? Are you guys seeing that giant ball of fire that makes all of the English people's pasty skin peel back and fall off of their bones?
Yeah, I mean, periodically. We've had some really nice weather back and forth. I was just in the West Country over the weekend for a live show, and it was definitely cloudier and rainier there. But it's fine. I mean, it's getting there. I mean, it's weird. It reminds me of the Midwest in a lot of ways. It's just like if when you bowl, but you put the guards on the gutters in a bowling alley. Mm-hmm. So it like stops you from having your ball go in the gutter. It's like when kids are learning how to bowl. It's sort of like Midwestern weather, but with that, it's just as volatile, but nowhere near as like extreme. We put it that way. So you know what I mean? It goes back and forth. We've had like weird snaps where it's like getting down to like freezing temperature at night, but then like in the daytime it's like approaching the mid 60s. So I mean, whatever. As long as it's not like nightmare Midwestern, like it's minus 20 wind chill, and then it's like uncomfortably warm the next day. I'm okay with it. Although we have had weird, what I might call like thunder snow, like thunder hail. Mm-hmm. Which is unique. I was actually riding my bike to the studio a couple days ago and got caught in a hail snowstorm. Like it was snow, but it was I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe this is sleet. I always thought of sleet as like a mixture of rain and snow. This was like a mixture of hail and snow. Like it was absolutely hailstones. It was really dry, like rocky kind of ice, but it was coming down like snow, and like it kept up longer than a normal hailstorm would.
Yeah, sleet is like rain that can't figure out if it wants to become snow or rain, so it's just something in between. Hail like hurts.
Yeah, I was wearing a bike helmet and like all my protective gear, so but it felt like hail to me. It felt like weird hail snow. And when I was a kid in Germany, we had weird hail snow at one point too, where it piled up like snow would, like in the middle of July or something. So European weather, whatever, it gets people so crazy it makes them want to go colonize the Caribbean or whatever the fuck. So who knows?
I mean, look, what is all colonization from the European nations other than, wow, the weather here is really nice?
Yeah, that's like it's like reparations for weather. Right? It's like going in and like stealing good weather.
Like you guys have gold, you have like nice, trees here. Everything's very tropical. It's warm. I think I'm gonna go ahead and kill all of you.
And y'all ever heard of smallpox?
I mean, certainly I could sit here and, I could live beside you, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking actually you could work for free and I could build some really grand music halls. We did a live show in Bristol, which is like one of the wealthier cities outside of London, and it's entirely founded on slavery money. And they're really like, the sort of city fathers really like beat around this, try to like pretend that Bristol, it was just because it was the city of commerce, but it's like, yes, because of the Royal African Company and like all of the slave transportation. Like it's hilarious to me that we did as part of our show talking about like the history of that, and it's one of those things where it's like, yep, y'all got wealthy. Like people act like Europe is wealthy just because Europeans are just so damn smart. It's like, actually, Europeans are fucking dumber than shit. They just had like 250 years of people working for them for free.
Yeah, Europeans are not only are Europeans stupid, but they also like live on no natural resources. It all comes back to the weather, Nate, because everybody else lived in nice places and they're like, why would I leave? I have everything I need here. I've got, the Native Americans have buffalo roaming across the plains. We have these beautiful prairies. We have, decent weather where it's cold and it's warm, and we have seasons. Why would we ever want to leave and go colonize anything? And then you got people from this like fucked up little island who are just like, the only thing that they can do is sit around and invent new ways to kill each other because there's nothing else to do. And then they got into a boat and decided to do that around the rest of the world.
They're like, hey, we could use this salt, the one kind of seasoning that exists in this country, to make our food taste better, but instead we'd rather just like go murder people for cinnamon. And thus, the history of the West. Speaking of the history of the West and empire and colonization, we were going to talk first about a particularly not so good incident involving the British Army, also famous for colonization and empire. Just they did it before America. In fact, they did it to America, and then America decided we could do it better with more aircraft carriers.
Yeah, America is basically pointing at England, yelling, "I learned it from watching you, Dad."
Exactly.
And we do need to, of course, say we're talking about the latest thing that the British Army has done that's fucked up, not just any random thing. Because Lord knows the British Army does a lot of fucked up stuff. I don't think we ever talked about their whole snowflake. The way that they were trying to recruit people by like calling them snowflakes and shit. The British Army has some questionable things going on for their recruitment, and I believe their recruitment is privatized too, which is very strange. I don't understand how that works.
Wait, I don't know about the recruiting for the British Army, to be honest with you, and it would be kind of dumb for me to try to weigh in because, I mean, everything I know, I just know from like what I've seen on social media. Like, I have not really done a deep dive. I will say,
we'll talk to Lindsay. Lindsay, come on the show. Talk to us about getting into the army in Britain.
Yeah. So anyway, the story that we're going to talk about is that apparently at a target shooting range at a British Army garrison in Kabul, Afghanistan, so 6 soldiers, I believe, or 4 soldiers who were wearing the insignia of paratroopers were filmed firing simulation weapons, like basically training weapons that don't have actual bullets and gunpowder, but rather have like paintball rounds, shooting them at a big portrait of Jeremy Corbyn. Who is for those of you who have been living under a rock for the last 4 years, is the leader of the Labour Party, the opposition leader, who has been reviled as a hard left Marxist, but also is actually good at politics. And because British politicians are like animals raised in captivity who like have to be coaxed through like VR simulations to know how to fuck, anyone who's good at politics can just like run rampant in this country because most people are they're just morons, and that's sort of the norm. So anyway, Jeremy Corbyn, we reported on this in 2017, it was promised that Labour would be wiped out for a generation under Corbyn because he's just too goddamn left, too far left, posing all these hard left policies like maybe we should build more social housing, which is the British equivalent of public housing, but is a way more common thing. And was at one point, I think the government owned something like 70% of housing, and then under Thatcher, it was all sold off. And now I was just looking at this morning, houses that cost the equivalent of, say, $60,000 in the, like basically adjusted, they cost the equivalent of $60,000 or $70,000 adjusted for inflation in the early 1980s are now selling for the equivalent of $800,000 to $1 million. They're not any better houses, it's just scarcity because they've sold off all the public housing and they haven't built new stuff. The stuff they do build that's new is all private with like 10% of it is affordable, but it's a complete scam. So needless to say, they had policies like, we're going to better fund the NHS. We're going to make a university tuition free again, like it used to be before Tony Blair, the former Labour Prime Minister, introduced tuition fees. They were talking about policies that were squarely within the realm of like what you would find in social democratic countries like Sweden and Norway and Finland.
And policies that they had 20 years ago.
Yeah. Policies they had 25, 30 years ago. Policies that would have been completely the norm in the 1970s that basically had only become left, in scare quotes, policies because of the way that the window has shifted to the right post-Thatcher and post-Reagan in the West. And basically, the British media, which is completely right wing, and most of which is owned by insane billionaires who like live in tax havens, all of which is basically even the most left major paper in Britain is still center right, and that would be the Guardian. They were like, oh no, it's just student politics. These people have no idea what's going on. Like they're going to destroy labor. Like we're fucked because the children are just unrepentant snowflake millennials. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The same dumb bullshit over and over again, as it always is. And then, of course, they did quite well in the general election. So they didn't win an overall majority. They are not the largest party. The Tories still are the largest overall party, but they destroyed the Tories' majority, which meant that they had to form a coalition with a hard right party from Northern Ireland. The other thing I'd point out about this, just as a recap for American listeners, is that although basically Labour was polling really far behind. Once the elections started in Britain, there are rules with regard to media coverage and how they cover, like there's a sort of balance rule as far as like how they have to be to portray positions from both sides, from all parties, et cetera, give them equal airtime. That led to significant rise in Labour's polling, and there was also a significant amount of opposition within the Labour Party because lots and lots of people were holdouts from Blair who basically just stonewalled Corbyn and said, we're not going to do what you say. You're going to get fired anyway. You're going to lose this election. The point being, literally, they were so smug and thought that they were going to win the election that they had already zeroed out all of Corbyn's team's access badges to the Labour Party headquarters for the morning after the election because they were convinced he was going to resign because they're dumbasses. The reason I bring this up is that there are probably 30 or 40 parliamentary seats or constituencies that had extremely small margins that could have been won with a little bit better Labour turnout. Those same people who decided to zero out Jeremy Corbyn's team's badges to get into the buildings also were the ones in charge of apportioning funds for turnout efforts in some of these constituencies. So chances are very good that under different management, they actually could have won in 2017 and we could have a Labour government now. We don't, but basically, Jeremy Corbyn is apparently really bad at his job and an idiot Marxist who wants to take us back to the 70s, and yet he seems to be really good at politics over and over again. The reason being, like I said before, the entire British media is made up of the same privileged classes of people who went to private schools and basically are like pandas raised in captivity that have to like be hypnotized into fucking because they just don't understand how to live in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the entirety of Corbyn is very reminiscent of Bernie Sanders. How like every time you see like a list of like here's all the Democratic hopefuls who are going to run for 2020 and who are very popular, and at the top is Joe Biden, and then third place is Beto, and it's like but what about that? It's like we don't talk about Sanders. We don't talk about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Corbyn has that same thing. Everybody's just like. I don't understand. I don't understand why he's nobody. Nothing's going to happen. And like literally everybody's, other than like the extremely insane online people who are just like upset that he's around still. For the most part, the kids like him.
So something I pointed out about the Labour government or Labour Party here is that the sort of Labour establishment tried very hard to make it so people who joined the party in order to support Corbyn's candidacy for Labour leader in 2015 could not vote. There was a leadership challenge in 2016. He won by a larger margin, but it actually came down to a Supreme Court decision because the Labour Party tried to disenfranchise all those members because they're like, no, you're not allowed to join. You joined to support Corbyn and we don't want that, so you can't vote. So it was a lot of fuckery. Also, something to point out with regard to why does the military hate Jeremy Corbyn? Well, I don't necessarily know if the military does across the board, but I do think that the British military skews hard right, just like America's military. The things that there's been a lot of bullshit in tabloid media here, but I mean, the tabloids are the louder and bold-faced versions of the same shit that gets told in like the more genteel right-wing papers. So whereas the Sun and the Daily Express and the Daily Mail are going on about this Marxist wants to steal your money and make Britain a post-industrial society or whatever the fuck they say, who knows? Because they've run out of ideas a long time ago. A more genteel, cleaned up version of that will appear in like the Times of London or the Telegraph or the Observer or any one of these things, these magazines, these broadsheets that basically it's just the same shit over and over again. They can't comprehend why this politics would be popular because the world is going great for them. Whereas, I mean, we've talked about this, I think, on the show a little bit. Britain has socialized healthcare and nationalized hospitals, but it's outside of the wealthier parts of London, it's one of the poorest countries in Europe in terms of just like general quality of life. It's falling the fuck apart and has been for a really long time, but particularly it never really got over, especially in the Midlands and the North, it never got over the deindustrialization under Thatcher. But then also post 2008 crash, the recovery has basically been confined to London alone. So there's a lot of misery, a lot of deprivation in this country. And one of the things about this with Jeremy Corbyn has been that one of the attack lines they use on him, besides the like, oh, he's gonna, God forbid, Jeremy Corbyn, the Marxist is gonna make us repatriate all of the money we've stashed away in Bermuda where we don't pay taxes on it. But in order to kind of like gin up outrage towards him amongst people who aren't rich, they say, oh, well, he was cozy with the IRA, he was cozy with Sinn Féin, he's friends with all of Britain's enemies, he loves Hamas. And recently, the Ministry of Defense and the British government have brought charges against a single soldier who was involved in the Bloody Sunday massacre in Northern Ireland, and I want to say 1971, but I may have that year wrong. And as a result, there's been like this kind of jumped up sense of betrayal amongst a bunch of people who are British Army veterans, particularly Northern Ireland veterans. And Jeremy Corbyn is even though Jeremy Corbyn is not in power, he's the he's a leader of the opposition, but it's Theresa May's government that's making this decision. It's, I think, Gavin Williamson, the Minister of Defense, who's ultimately the signatory on this decision to prosecute this soldier. But of course, they're blaming Corbyn because apparently he loves the IRA and he loves Sinn Féin, which, in Corbyn's own words, he said, we knew in the 70s and 80s that the British government trying to pursue a military solution in Northern Ireland wasn't going to work. And we want a dialogue with all the parties involved. I'm not going to get into the Troubles here because we could do like a 20-part series on the Troubles going back to like the 600s to be able to explain. But the long and short of it is there's a part of Ireland, for the American listeners, there's part of Ireland that was colonized by the British, and they're like, no, this is Britain. It's not Ireland. It will always be Britain. And we don't care what Irish Catholic residents of this region want. They don't deserve civil rights. Thus, the Troubles. That's a super simplified version. But long story short, Corbyn's position was, we want dialogue because we want a peaceful solution. Thatcher's process was, let's militarily occupy Northern Ireland and we can do a proto-Iraq on them and do counterinsurgency. It didn't work, obviously. And so basically the idea that there's organizational opposition to Jeremy Corbyn within the British military, I mean, yeah, if you read the tabloids, all you get is just this bizarre fear-mongering bullshit. And then also, I think, just recently, too, because of the fact that Corbyn's done very well in sort of like getting the Tories to corner themselves on Brexit. There's been this recent talk of like, well, they're going to do cross-party talks to try to come up with a solution. And of course, all the tabloids have been going crazy about, Corbyn, the Marxist, the traitor, how dare Theresa May betray Brexit like this, et cetera, et cetera. So all of this is expected. And the last thing I'll say is, the reason that this has become very dangerous is that, for one, there's been lots of sort of subsurface chatter amongst like anonymous sources from the military in news stories saying things like, oh, well, if Corbyn became PM, we would have a military coup against him. Corbyn was recently attacked while visiting an East London mosque. He was punched in the face by a dude who was holding an egg in his hand, but he'll hit him in the face with a fist. And the media was like, ha, Corbyn got egged. What a schoolboy prank, even though like he got punched in the fucking face. And like that shouldn't have happened, but it did, because this was like a hard right, anti-Islam, pro-Brexit guy who did it. So he's the prime constituency of the British press. So of course, they don't care about it. But I think that what you're seeing is a very volatile moment, because all of the forces of money and establishment power in this country are saying, this guy is the enemy, he must be destroyed before he betrays us. And that tends to not go well, especially in a country where a member of parliament was murdered during the Brexit referendum campaign over similar issues.
Yeah,
anyway,
and which is what we're seeing here as well. It's just that our hard right people, rather than take it out on a politician, go and shoot up a mosque or shoot up a school or whatever.
Yeah, or that guy that was like planning to attack Ilhan Omar or something like that. I think if you look at the way that Ilhan Omar is portrayed in the press, the way that what she says gets completely distorted by establishment media, like you get like recursive quotes of quotes of quotes to the point where it makes it sound 100 times more insane than what she actually said. There's lots of dumb bad faith concern trolling, and on the right there's basically an open call to arms. That's 100% what Jeremy Corbyn has been going through.
With our, in America, we see it's a very, well, it's not strange, because obviously the right wingers are just like weirdly horny for Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, Jeremy Corbyn looks a snack sometimes, but
Oh yeah, Jeremy Corbyn, especially now that he's working out all the time, he's going to be yoked Corbyn. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, maybe the British are just kind of into that daddy look. So hey, no judgment here or anything. Now, I will say though, it's we talk a lot about the reactionary right, especially when it comes to the military. But we also have to talk about how fucking stupid do you have to be to, one, be the guy who's like, I'm going to shoot at this picture of Jeremy Corbyn, and two, be like, all right, are you recording this? Because this is going to be fucking rad. Like,
definitely time to put this on Snapchat. Glad all of our faces are visible and we're in uniform.
Yeah. There's like one guy who like has a moment like on his face where we can see him kind of, it seems like he's trying to say, I wonder if this is a great idea. I mean, he still goes through with it. Like, and I just cannot fathom the overall stupidity of soldiers in general. Like, and these are like elite soldiers too, right? These aren't like some sort of dipshit privates, sitting around, been in the army for a day and a half and don't know what the fuck they're doing. These are paras. These are the people, like, what that is, that's a training facility for taking VIPs. around Afghanistan. So it's very understandable why they have a picture of Jeremy Corbyn. It's just not very understandable why they would be like, hey, let's all line up and just shoot at this thing and videotape it and of course, like I'm just
as I understand it. Also, I point this out.
My brain is just fucking folded in on itself watching that. Just be like, I can't understand how stupid you have to be.
Also, something I point out too is that I think a better analog for paras in the United Kingdom or in the British Army would be to like the Ranger Regiment, as opposed to just being in an airborne unit in the U.S. Army where, you go through 3 weeks of airborne school, which is challenging, but is by no means insane. And it's just 3 weeks of the same thing for everyone. Whereas if I understand it correctly, to be a para, like you basically have to like get accepted as a recruit to a regiment and then like go through a lot of hazing and training to get there. It's a much more drawn out process. So for these guys to be doing this, it's just really, really dumb. And I mean, dudes in the U.S. military do dumb shit all the time. Why someone thought it was a good idea to put it on Snapchat? I think so. Right after the 2017 general election, a fire broke out in a council tower, like a tower that was called social housing or council housing. Basically, the thing I was talking about previously, state-owned public housing. And it turned out that the Residents Association had been complaining to their local council, which was run by the Conservative Party, for years about safety conditions in this building. And they were like, there's going to be a fire, and it's going to be catastrophic. And one of the things that was determined was that in order to save like £300,000, so basically about $500,000, they used non-fire retardant cladding on this building when they installed insulation cladding on it. So it wound up, the fire wound up trapping lots and lots of people, and it wound up killing, I think, 87 people. And this tower was known as Grenfell Tower. It was in the London borough of Kensington and Chelsea, which is one of the wealthiest parts of London, and it's a Conservative borough. So days after the election, I think the election was June 8th, and the Grenfell Tower fire happened on June 11th. So this is obviously like a fucking catastrophe, and almost everyone who died was, these were all working people or elderly people. Most of them, or many of them, were immigrants, but some of them were British born and raised. And it was a fucking disaster. It was hideous, and they still are dealing with like the government just not rehousing these people. Like they don't really give a fuck. Like once it came out of the news, it wasn't like a headline piece anymore. They just stopped trying to help these people get them housing. And obviously, like, housing in London is insanely expensive. So on top of the fact that these people just survived a massively traumatic event, getting them housed, just letting them fend for themselves in the private market is basically impossible. They're not going to be able to get housing that's equivalent to what they had before. So I'm telling you this for context. Back in, like, I want to say November, right for when people have bonfires in this country, to commemorate Guy. I think I don't know if it's to commemorate by Guy Fawkes Night or it's just the fact that fucking people like having bonfires. I'm not the British subject matter expert all the time. Some dudes, like some middle-aged people in near Croydon, which is like a city in Greater London. It's like it's hard to describe. It's basically, it used to be an independent city. It's been sort of like absorbed into Greater London. They filmed themselves burning an effigy of Grenfell Tower in their backyard and just like laughing about it. And being like, haha, oh, look, there's a woman in a cob, she's burning to death, haha, this is funny. And then they shared it on Snapchat. And nobody thought to themselves, hey, this is really fucking stupid. For one, this is a horrible thing to do, but for another, why are we sharing it on social media? Because the default setting in this country is just like fever pitch racism and xenophobia all the time. And so I'm going to make the argument that the reason why these soldiers shared this video is because there's nothing in their immediate purview that introduces the idea that this might not be a funny and good idea, because it's nonstop weird reactionary xenophobic racism and just general shittiness all the time. Because if you just consume British media at face value, that's all you're getting.
Yeah. I'm certainly not the British subject matter expert either, but absolutely, there is no, there's nothing that stops anybody from thinking these things. Like, I mean, fuck, recently we have our own president who's just like, nope, we're shutting down the border. Nobody can come here. All immigrants and asylum seekers are just a bunch of fucking animals. And like, if you have a normal brain who isn't a complete asshole, you think, wow, that's horrible. Why would anybody fucking say that? But the problem is that the people who support Donald Trump believe that. And I know a lot of people who believe that and say, yeah, I mean, our country is too full. It's like, from what? What is full here? Like, I have fucking abandoned houses in my neighborhood. My city was fucking saved by Bosnian immigrants. Like, St. Louis wouldn't be shit without the Bosnians coming over in the 90s. Like, coming over and, taking up housing in, like, really run down, fucked up neighborhoods and really building it back up and, doing business and bringing commerce and bringing all their, everybody else on over. So, like, the idea, like, so it's always fucks me up in St. Louis whenever anybody says, why should we let these immigrants in? It's like, fuck, man, we wouldn't have shit in the city if it wasn't for immigrants.
Well, that's the same story with this country. I mean, and that's something that's also been a recent scandal that's been completely overlooked or just completely ignored. Even it was headline news for a couple of weeks, and then they chose to ignore it. But this country was completely rebuilt after World War II with the help of people recruited from what was called the Commonwealth, was still called the Commonwealth, but basically British colonies. But between 1947, 46, 47, and 1971, or really we'll go so as far as to say like 1983, that might be a good boundary. These countries all became independent. But these people who were invited over by the British government to work in jobs like in the NHS, or other civil service positions, or things like in trades, working, in construction, working in the various British industries that were later, basically the big story I can give you is this. Imagine if Obama had taken Mitt Romney's advice in 2009 and said, oh, just let the entire U.S. auto industry collapse. Whatever, we'll just buy cars from Japan now, and all of that had gone out of business. That basically happened in England in the 1980s under Thatcher. So all of this, the economic situation in this country is dominated by the fact that they let heavy industry die, they let manufacturing die, and they said, it doesn't matter, we have oil, money, and finance. And now, basically, London is the world's financial capital, but that's basically it. So all of these people that were brought over, they were invited over. They were British citizens by birth. They were born in the Caribbean, in places like Jamaica or Trinidad or Barbados. If they were born in places like Kenya or Tanzania, if they were born in places like Singapore, Hong Kong, regardless, they were British citizens by birth. And when they arrived on British passports, they were given leave to remain, which is still a thing, which is basically like having a green card. You're not it's official status that you can stay as long as you want to. Obviously, they've now changed the rules and made it you need to apply for British citizenship to have the protections of citizenship. But what I'm saying is these people were brought here, they came here, they raised families here, and in many cases, they brought their children here with them as minors who traveled on their parents' passports, but moved to the United Kingdom as small children and have only ever lived in the United Kingdom as small, from early childhood on. So they're British. They're raised here. They were educated here. They worked here. And those people, because most of the people who came in the 1940s would be quite elderly now, and many of them have died. Their children are now around retirement age, and the British government since 2011 has been ruthlessly and mercilessly targeting these people for deportation. Because somehow, wow, big surprise, they accidentally destroyed an archive of all of the landing cards of people who arrived in this country from like 1948 to 1973. In the early 70s, they started passing laws to make it harder for people from the Commonwealth to immigrate. And then under Thatcher, they passed a law that ended birthright citizenship. So basically, if your parents didn't have papers, basically as a permanent resident with settled status or citizenship, you weren't a British citizen and you didn't have a right to be in this country. And so they have deported hundreds and hundreds, I think if not thousands, of elderly people from the West Indies and West Africa who have lived their entire lives in this country, paid taxes in this country, been worked like anyone else, but they've decided, oh, you don't have papers. Like, you did have papers, but we can't find them because we somehow, quote, quote, accidentally destroyed them. And The Guardian broke this story, and it took them weeks and weeks of reporting to find a single instance of this happening to a white person. And it did. There was a woman who was Canadian, and they were threatening to deport her until she was able to find her old passport that had a leave to remain stamp on it from like 1969 or something. But basically, when you look at a thing like that and you say, wow, only one person that we've been able to find was caught up in the dragnet who wasn't black? Funny how that works. And so this is the kind of like the climate that we're in this country. And when you look at it, you're like, wow, it really does seem like it's insanely institutionally racist, and they really hate immigrants, and they'll do everything they possibly can to be like, oh, we'd love for you to stay, but sorry, the law says this, and we just can't help it, even though they're the ones who write the laws. And so I bring this up because just as we were talking about Grenfell, they recently had a government, I don't know what the body was who published this, but they said that they were going to like compensate people who were denied NHS benefits because, you know, they were saying, oh, you have no right to like medical care. You have no right to social housing. You have no right to consular assistance. Your people's bank accounts were getting canceled. In some cases, people's passports were getting canceled while they were abroad. There were numerous stories of people who like couldn't go visit their parents who were dying or visit their family members who were dying in places like Jamaica because the British government was like, nope, you're actually not a citizen and you can't have a British passport. Or even worse, they went and then while they were gone, the government canceled their passports. They decided the compensation was going to be like £500 per person. So that's like about $700. They're like, oh yeah, for your troubles, here's $700.
What is this? Is this killing an Afghan farmer's goat here? Like that's what you pay for like, sorry, we blew up your goat.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, we drove over your farm fields. Here's $700. And it's like, sorry, we literally in some cases stopped you from getting the cancer treatment that could have saved your life. Here's £500. So that's the level of institutional racism that you're dealing with in this country. And, you know, somebody like Jeremy Corbyn says, hey, let's not do that. And all of a sudden it's just like, stop this Marxist terrorist. Will someone rid me of this meddlesome priest? Like, it's this same kind of bullshit. And so it's weird because I say this, I mean, I've kind of gone on a tangent about British politics here, but it's like from a distance in America, you can look at it and be like, oh, wow, Jeremy Corbyn was like if Sanders had won the primary. But what you don't realize is when you have the entirety of the establishment trying desperately to discredit you at every turn, no matter how ridiculous and absurd it is, you just see how much of like a siege mentality you take on. And it's really honestly insane. Yeah. And so this thing with the British Army, like them putting this video and be like, oh, we're investigating, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but what they're going to do is just be like, oh, who shared this video? Fuck you, buddy fucker. And that's going to be it.
Yeah, or who downloaded it? Who's the one who, like, Snapchat's supposed to be private, man. You don't download that shit and share it out. Yeah, and you know, with people like Jeremy Corbyn and people like Bernie Sanders and, you know, people who have like actual progressive politics, you end up seeing them get constantly attacked. And the thing is that it works, and not just with Republicans, you know, or the conservatives or the Tories, because they're gonna hate you know, the other side regardless. But then you see like actual people who are like Democrats or liberals, or the Labor Party who fucking buy into it, and they're just like,
yeah, like
and
the
thing is that
yeah.
I hear so much like, you know, I like God bless my wife yesterday in bed. She was reading something. She's like, all right, tell me what's wrong with Mayor Pete. And I was like, well, I just did a whole podcast episode about this. But you know, the thing is that when I hear a lot of people talk about politicians, I hear them talk about how they feel about them. Like how I feel, you know, this person's nice, that person's not nice. This person's young, that person's old. I don't like, you know, I hear people when they say, you know, there's the insane conservatives who say, yes, you're a crazed Marxist communist who's gonna, you know, bring down America. Sure, whatever. What the fuck? I mean, that's me, maybe, but that's, you know, certainly not AOC or Ilhan Omar or Jeremy Corbyn. But you have this, like, that insane propaganda works its way into the people who are supposed to be on your side. And, you know, it's, and then you get the argument that, like, well, we can't have this person. We can't have Jeremy Corbyn. We can get somebody who's a little less progressive, though, but still, you know, labor, still a good guy, still, you know, on our team, but just not this. We want the guy who's, like, you know, kind of a quiet Republican. We want that's what the Democrats, that's what the labor wants, because, you know, as it all comes down to money. You know, nobody gives a fuck about the poor people out in rural England. whether they be white, black, or anything else. Nobody cares about these people that are trying to go home that they are basically fucking over. It's all a way to kill people, basically, like without killing them, without saying, this is beyond my control because of law. It's the same thing with insulin. How like I think it's like now like a quarter of people who need insulin have to like stagger their insulin because of how much it costs. That is literally just a way of like, that is just eugenics right there, honestly. Like I fully feel like that is an insane like capitalist eugenics program, which doesn't make sense to me because if you just let all the people who need insulin die, who are you selling fucking insulin to, buddy? But I mean, that's me. I mean, I'm the guy that can think 5 years ahead, not the guy who thinks about the shareholder breathing down my neck right now.
I think I've got something for you because I mean, it's something that I've noticed here that, similarly with the insulin thing. Yeah, the British government, in the United Kingdom, we have the NHS, but one thing that's been happening a lot here since they instituted austerity when the Tories took power, because something to point out for American listeners that the Tories, there was an election in 2010, basically after the financial crisis happened, and the Tories didn't win enough seats to completely dominate the government. So they went into coalition with the Liberal Democrats, who are like the Liberal Democrats, great name, right? The Liberal Party and then the Social Democratic Liberal Party merged to form the Liberal Democrats. And they are absolutely a centrist party. They are like no further left than the American Democratic Party, sort of, the party elite kind of people. They're like the Clintons. They're in one case there was a decisive vote on Brexit policy that was taking place, and one of the MPs from the Liberal Democrats wasn't able to make the vote because he was giving a speech at some anti-gay conference. So needless to say, they are not particularly left. They are extremely center right. The Liberal Democrats went into coalition with the Tories and basically enabled the worst of their policies and has led to all of basically endless austerity. So whereas although there's been completely uneven recovery in America, there's been an economic recovery here. It's anemic across the board, and most people, aside from people who work in finance, have seen their, adjusted for inflation, their wages have declined since 2008. So the situation here is quite bad. The reason I bring it up is because although we have socialized medicine here, they have basically been using a sort of public-private style consultancy thing to systematically cut people's disability benefits. And it's been shown through journalism that they effectively deny people every time when they apply for benefits, or when they review, they always cancel their benefits and then force the burden of work on the disabled person to like appeal and go through the process. And by some counts, I'm not sure, like it's comparable to where it's hard to determine across the board if it's direct causation. But by some counts, since 2010, the estimate is it's something over 100,000 people have died as a result of preventable things related to these austerity policies that are harming the disabled, the elderly, people who live in rural communities, people who are isolated, people who are mentally ill, etc. And it's one of those things where whenever they need money for whatever fucking bullshit they want to do, whenever it's like, oh, we want to, promise £1 billion to the Democratic Unionist Party in Northern Ireland to like go into coalition with us, whenever it's some other shit, they all like when it's literally spending £16 million on a penthouse apartment for a British consular official in New York to like negotiate post-Brexit trade deals or whatever the fuck they think they're going to do in New York. Also, that as a side note, that house is amazing because if you look at the servants' quarters, they're literally the size of broom closets, which tells you a lot about who they are and who they think is going to be serving them. The point being, there's always money for that. You can always find money for that, and yet for some reason, when it's immigrants, when it's the disabled, when it's the people who are out of work, when it's people who are unable to be rugged individual capitalists, there's never any money, and we wish we didn't have to kill you. We wish we didn't have to take away your wheelchair. We wish we didn't have to like cut your pension. We wish we didn't have to cut your insulin, but we just can't because there's just not enough money. And I think the same thing can be said about the way that what's going on recently with Trump cutting military construction budgets. So be like, hi, I'm going to build my wall however the fuck I want to, even if they won't authorize it. By the way, our bases are underwater due to basically fucking climate change. And yeah, we're not going to fix it because fuck you. Which is also a news story that we've been watching this week.
Yeah, so Pentagon says climate change threatens Utah's Hill Air Force Base more than any other Air Force, Navy, or Army base. And then also we have Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Michael, which, like, I'm gonna be honest, I completely kind of forgot about those. They kind of blew through Florida, and because hurricane season is hurricane season, and just okay, so they come through, but like they've completely destroyed Air Force Base Tyndall, which is a a major Air Force base with a lot of our jets and shit on it, and it's underwater, and it's gonna cost like $3.5 billion with a B to fix it. Camp Lejeune, one of the Marine bases, is completely fucked. I mean, we already talked about how a lot of the on-post housing is absolutely fucked, and how the military is like how the military. This kills me because I was just thinking about it too. Because like it's like the military itself got duped into a fucking payday loan with these with these contracted companies. It's like, oh, it's just 99 years, man. Just sign the thing in 99 years. Yeah, we'll take care of everything. And then like afterwards, it's just like, I don't know how this happened, but I got to take a second job, delivering pizzas on post to pay off my stupidity here for the next 99 years. So yeah, we have like these major bases that are failing and going underwater and being completely wrecked, where at one point in time they were built to withstand, like a base in Florida is built to withstand a hurricane. A base in Florida is not built to withstand the hurricanes that are now happening because of climate change. And I have already reported on and read and done a lot of stuff on how even back in 2008, the military and the Pentagon was like, yeah, climate change is real and it's a massive threat to us. Like the rise of Boko Haram is tied directly to climate change because of parts of Africa being turned into swaths of desert. Agricultural areas are becoming completely arid. People are losing their livelihoods, and when food and jobs and water, all these things are scarce, guess what happens? It gives a fucking fertile feeding ground for a rise in brutal dictatorship and terrorism and all these
extremism
things.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, look, it's turning into fucking Mad Max Fury Road in some places because of this insane need for driving your fucking car to the grocery store rather than fucking walking. So now in America we're seeing this, and not only are we having people, it's like, well, these military bases, fuck it, we're just not gonna do anything about it. But we even have people saying, how dare these veterans fucking use the benefits that we provided them? Like, as if a veteran who uses the VA is being weak and using and asking for a government handout. When, like, I don't know if y'all know this about joining the Army, but you don't make much money. Like, nobody does it for the money. You do it for the benefits.
If you make money, it's only because you're losing years of your life in combat where you don't pay taxes. But even then, the salary is not that great. I mean, there are some people who are like, E7 special operators who can get like $100,000 bonuses, and they can enlist, downrange, like re-enlist downrange, and then not pay taxes on most of their bonus and salary. But you look at that and you're like, wow, cool. I can destroy my body. I can destroy my psyche. I can dedicate myself to nothing but imperialism and resource extraction. And maybe if I'm lucky, after 20 years, after taxes, I might like become close to a cool ass $1 million, if I'm lucky, if I'm the top, if I'm a SEAL, if I'm a fucking Delta Force guy, if I'm a Green Beret. More likely than not, you're gonna get, you'll wind up with like a quarter of that shit if you're really saving. And most people can't save like that, so you won't be able to. But I mean, on the other hand, if you work in finance, if you're working like a hedge fund, like you can easily, if you're like an investment analyst and you do well, you can eeasily see yourself making $1 million a year in your 20s. So like you're not making shit compared to rich people, to actual rich people. You're just there's some loopholes in the system that allow you to get things like free healthcare and college tuition, which is great for middle class benefits. But without those benefits, why the fuck would people do it? I mean, nobody would want to join the military. I mean, aside from bored 20-year-olds, but the people who are telling you, oh, I'm re-enlisting for patriotism, like, yeah, maybe once you've already got that VA loan on your mortgage, but getting there means taking advantage of the benefits offered. And quite frankly, I don't think that you would be able to recruit. I mean, they're having problems recruiting people now, even with the benefits.
Oh yeah.
So
If you take away the need for like a job that has benefits like healthcare, and if you give free state college, the military will fucking collapse because there's no reason to do it anymore after that. Like, sure, there are always going to be the I'm doing it because of patriotism, or I'm doing it because mom and dad used to.
I'm Pete Buttigieg, and I need a gap year after Harvard.
Yeah, I want to run for president one day, so I better put in my time sitting on my ass as an intel analyst in Afghanistan. But there always will be people who want to join, but like I'm telling you, there's a lot of people that I met in boot camp, and a lot of people I meet now who are just like, man, I don't have any other real options. Like, there's no other way for me to get health care. There's no other way for me to get like a retirement or life insurance at my age, and I totally understand that. Like, I don't knock somebody for that if like if you feel like that's the only option that you have. The problem is, though, is as soon as you take those benefits as not necessary, as soon as you don't need to join the army to do those things, I don't see anybody joining the army anymore. Like I said, other than I want to go kill brown people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's one of those situations in which, like Pete Hasgeth, whatever this fucking guy who is complaining, saying that veterans are sponges for using things like disability. Look, man, like, the thing with disability is that most people don't get very much of it, and if they do get it, it's not a ton of money in the grand scheme of things. It would be a very, very generous universal basic income if people were able to get something, like if you were at the 60% rate, which is, I think, for a single veteran with no dependents, it's adjusted each year, is around $1,000 a month. So don't get me wrong, it's tax free. That would be an amazing amount of money for UBI, but it's not like you can live off that in most places in America. It's just a safety net, which, if you're a veteran and you're a combat veteran and you did things that got you a 60% disability rating or 50% disability rating, chances are good you may have times in your life when you can't work, or when you can't work as much as you need to be able to like make it in fucking capitalist Thunderdome. And so the idea that we're sponges for using that, it's like, it just reminds me that these people, they've become so accustomed to the idea that they can just, I don't know, maybe it's true. Maybe that they've become so accustomed to the idea that if you just are constantly on the offensive saying the shit that like Facebook uncles are saying, that can stand in for any meaningful politics. Like, I don't think that people like Pete Hasgeth or whomever the fuck really have any strong opinions one way or the other. They're just being paid to trash the VA, and they're being paid to say that anyone who opposes Trump is a traitor. And if Donald Trump fucks over the military to the point where, as we saw in this article we were reading, you see active duty general officers going to the press trying to force change in policy because it's screwing up things like infrastructure at military bases. When you get to that point, like, clearly Donald Trump and his insane, just like rapacious, strip everything and sell it for the copper wiring fucking policies are causing consternation and harm. But there's still that, burn my house down, daddy, I love it, just let me be racist element of Trump's support. And he can go after anyone. And I think that's the thing that people don't seem to realize, is there is no ceiling, there is no bottom, rather. He can go after anyone. He can go after anyone. He can go after anyone. He can say it's good. It's like it's okay to murder migrant children because they're not people. And 40% of America will support him because that's what they believe, and that's what they've always believed.
Well, he did kind of fuck up, though, because he fucked with people's money. I know a lot of people are very upset about their tax returns this year. I know certainly I owe money, but that's I took out some Roth IRA, so you always got to pay a little bit on that. But I know a lot of people who are like, my return, what I'm getting back is not what it should be, or I owe this year, and generally it's like, well, if you owe, it's because you are making more money, right? But that's also not a thing that's happening for most people. Like, most people are not suddenly just like, oh, I got such a huge raise that now I just owe money to the federal government. That's not happening for the people who, are working part-time at Target or whatever. So you got a lot of people whose money is getting fucked with, especially, the farmers in Missouri, all the soybean farmers, as much as the right loves to pull a face and call everybody soy boy, guess what? That's a huge market in America, and us shutting down trade with China and fucking with tariffs there has been fucking over a lot of people. And like it does eventually, like it's always going to come back around to, well, I get to say the N word, so I'm okay with it. But there, and I think wasn't there are people who are just like, my company collapsed, but I'm okay because Trump is making America better. It's like you literally lost your livelihood. Like I cannot understand that level. People call us brainwashed, Nate, because we joined the military. I cannot fucking even understand the level of brainwashed you have to be like, these policies have completely ruined my life, but I still support the man who put them out there because I'm scared of MS-13 in Utah or whatever the fuck. It's an insane brainwashing that has happened. And I've been, and we've talked about, how Fox News has been doing this, how a lot of people have said, like, I've watched my family in slow fucking decline, from being Obama supporters in 2008 to being QAnon conspiracy people in 2019. And, you get people who are just like, who watch it and they're like, well, this is, okay. Maybe I agree with it. Maybe I don't. That's okay because I'm smart enough to tell the difference. And then it just is a slow decline. And then your brain just keeps getting reprogrammed and reprogrammed and reprogrammed by these, by the Tucker Carlsons and the Sean Hannitys of the world. Glenn Beck used to not be a guy that just like yelled at a chalkboard. He used to like have normal things that he said. Sean Hannity used to have normal things that he said. Tucker Carlson used to just be a dweeb with a bow tie on fucking CNN. And now he's like an outright white nationalist. One, because that pays the bills. But two, we see how that is, creating a cause and effect on the rest of America. This is why like QAnon is a thing now, which is still absolutely insane to me. But also I don't sit and consume that kind of media. So I don't know, I'm a little different because I learned a long time ago to not watch any 24-hour news outlet or anything that I'm not directly paying for myself, because news got to be paid for by somebody, and if it's not me, then it's probably somebody who's trying to sell me something. That's the world we've built for ourselves at this point, Nate. Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, I look at it too sometimes that I feel like, what is the role that the military has in this? What is it that you and I can talk about this and we can see where we're coming. Like, we can see through the propagandizing, we can see through the scapegoating, and a lot of people don't seem to be able to. A lot of people join the military, receive basically the closest thing to socialized benefits in America, like the best American socialism can offer in terms of like the level of benefits you get while being part of the empire. And they turn around and have decided they're rugged individualists. I mean, we saw that post just this week of this 19-year-old private being like, I already own a house, what's your excuse? And it's like, well, a couple of things. First of all,
let me explain to you the housing market.
I think the thing that's really interesting to me, and I've been thinking about this a lot, like, why is it that people that we serve with who are also beneficiaries of social benefits, who are also beneficiaries of social welfare that the military provides, of these very generous, relative to American capitalism and labor, very, very generous benefits. What is it about the experience that turns these people into these weird haters who are convinced that no one deserves anything except them, who deserves everything? And I think what I've come down to is, I think the military trains people and brainwashes people to have nothing but contempt for the weak. If someone's on profile, then they've got to be a slacker. They've got to be a shammer. If someone's, waiting till the end of their profile to do PT again, they're totally a shammer. If somebody, can't handle a deployment because psychologically it's broken them down, then they're a faker. They're a pussy. They're lying. They just can't hack it. And I think that left unexamined, these attitudes then bleed over, that anyone who didn't join the military also is a pussy and couldn't hack it and doesn't deserve anything. Anybody with a disability who couldn't join the military because of their disability, they don't deserve shit, they're just lazy. And it's just that same mentality gets repeated over and over again, and that's how you come up with these things where you try to explain to these people, these countries where migrants are coming from they can't live a normal life, and they're literally fleeing for their lives. And they're like, oh, well, I'm a self-made man. I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And it's like, no, get the fuck out of here. Like, whatever. You were raised in America with the benefits of being an American, and you joined the Marine Corps or whatever out of your own desire, and then they rewarded you handsomely for it. And I guess it's to me, I don't know if it's so simple as, because if I say, oh, we just need to, try to like encourage people to feel empathy, that's like saying, oh, you should have more mindfulness. Like, it doesn't fucking mean shit. But I do find myself wondering sometimes, why is it that these same people will go above and beyond to share and contribute to anything about, wounded warrior style stuff? Like, this guy is in a bad state, he needs help, but they can't seem to get it through their brains that maybe people deserve that same latitude, that same generosity, because they're human beings and not just because they're also American military veterans. You know what I mean? And I see a lot of this. Like, it's just this failure. They demonstrate the ability to identify someone deserving of empathy. So, they're capable of empathy. They just refuse to consider that maybe the other human beings in this world are not so simple as racist boomer Facebook memes make them out to be.
It's easier to other people when you don't see them as human. I mean, as we see our president doing with anybody who's like, I'd like to seek asylum in America. And it's like, no, you're an animal. That's and Tucker Carlson saying, oh, they're going to bring disease and everything up to America. And, it's easy to hate the person. I mean, hell, that's why in Iraq and Afghanistan, we call the enemy Haji rather than, by their name, and understand that maybe they're a dad with a kid, or, they have brothers and sisters. It's easier to kill somebody. It's easier to push somebody down in the dirt. And it's easier to let them, die in a pauper's grave when you don't, have to give a fuck about them. And therein lies the difference between, the socialists and everybody else, is that, I don't trust the government any more than anybody else does. But I just want everybody to be taken care of. And it's fucking stupid that we can't do that. And if you don't believe that, everybody deserves to be taken care of by the, basic fact that they are a human being walking on this fucking ball of an earth, then go fuck yourself. Because, like, honestly, I got nothing for you. Like, we're not dogs, who chase away the wounded one. We're people. And, we live in... If you don't... Nate... We fucking live in a society. We live in a society, and if you don't want to live in a society, then go move to Racism Island. But just not this one, okay? This island is already racist enough. We don't need you. I'm saying, look, here's the thing. We take all the racists and put them in England, and then we take all the cool, like, leftist people, and we put them in. We might have to do that backwards because America's got more room, and there's probably more racists. But we take... Basically, we'll just do a swap. We'll put all the racist people in one country and all the cool people in the other country, and then we'll be fine. I don't care which one. What we need to do is just build autonomous boats that can harvest all of the trash that's accumulated in the Pacific Ocean, make a trash island, and then we can just put all the racists there. All right. Oh, so we're going to create a boat that's going to collect up all of your tweets. Anyway, I'm owned into silence. Thank you, everybody. We hope that this wasn't too fucking depressing, but hey, we live in a depressing world. Go listen to Trash Future, which is funny.
Hey, I think we're pretty funny in our own right. Also, we do live in a society. Thank you once again, everybody, for listening. Francis, what do you have for bonus content this week? Okay, so I've got the next episode of Generation Kill that I watched, Combat Jack, in which they discuss jerking off in combat zones quite a bit. There's a lot of other stuff that gets talked about in there as well. This is the one episode where we meet the chaplain, and the Marines talk about their time, why they dislike the chaplain, as well as this is the one with like a CIA dude just like randomly shows up, which is a really interesting part of the whole thing too. It's kind of cool to sit down and like watch these episode by episode and like have a beer and really kind of dig into it and then immediately go talk about it. So that's this week. That's on Monday. That'll be at the $1 level for all of you who
are giving whatever you can. We appreciate anything that anybody gives us. And even if it's not monetary, as long as you talk to your friends and family and say, hey, here's a cool podcast, and then immediately get chased out by your MAGA cousin at Thanksgiving or whatever. We appreciate you for your sacrifice. We press F to pay our respects to you.
We do. We press F every day.
So you can follow me at Army Strength, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. You can get us on YouTube. I still do Thursday night lives. The lives have been the software that I use has been fucking up on me, but I always pin the Thursday night live to my Twitter, so you can go back and watch it there. We are working on a zine now. I've got a few people that have been interested. Definitely want to hear if you're interested. Come and write for us. We're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff with it. I got some patches on order so far. I'm going to do another order of another round of stickers that are going to be coming out. All kinds of cool stuff to be sending out to you guys. So if you are not a member of the Patreon and you have been waiting for a reason to, our $10 level is going to be having that care package coming out to you. But of course, anything that you can give to us, we try to give you as much bonus content as we can. We're basically doing bonus once a week because we want to make sure that we are giving you your money's worth. So thank you so much for everything that you do. And Nate, we will talk to you next week.
Yep. Take it easy.
Zoom, zoom.